Hey everybody, Jason Bermas here for WeAreChange.org, and I am joined by a very special guest, Isaac Kappy. Now, for those of you who are unaware of Isaac Kappy, there was a storm a brewing, and it came to fruition about 3 weeks ago, maybe a little bit more, when he came forward during the James Gunn controversy and said some pretty astounding things that are going on not only in the entertainment industry, but all echelons of upper power, whether it be government or business. And movies like An Open Secret and A Conspiracy of Silence, which is very, very far in the past, have kind of highlighted this. But he gave some first accounts, talked about some other things, and I kind of waited to contact Isaac a few days. I wanted to see where it went. I wanted to see his body language, what I thought, and I thought the man was being completely honest. And so what I'm going to try to do here with this interview with Isaac is tell you who he is as a person, why he did this, and go over the first account knowledge and what's really going on here. So Isaac, thank you for joining me, and I'd really just like to start off with who you are. Like, you're not an actor out of the gates. You're a musician, you're an artist. How does somebody say, you know what, I'm going to Hollywood and I'm going to make it in acting? Like, what gave you that bug? Were you there for your music, for your art at first, and then that kind of developed?
I first moved to LA when I was, I think, 23, maybe a bit younger, years ago. Just with the typical dreams of stardom and stuff like that. I stayed for 2 years and got disillusioned. I was like, I don't want to deal with LA anymore. So I went back to New Mexico, and suddenly all these films started showing up because of a tax incentive in New Mexico, and I just started getting roles. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing the acting thing. Hollywood came to me.
So I see. So it really wasn't, you had done it at first and you were kind of familiar with the game, and all of a sudden Hollywood moved production to these smaller venues in New Mexico by you, and you were able to acquire work more easily because there wasn't a demand for acting, correct?
Well, no, there was a demand. There just wasn't a supply of.
I got you.
It was a smaller pool, so it was.
Okay.
You know.
So then you end up back in Hollywood. Now, when you're there the first 2 years, do you make a lot of connections? Like, are you hanging out with the Paris Jacksons, with the Dane Cooks you've talked about at that point? No.
No. That wasn't until I had a pretty bad breakup with a girl in 2014, and after that I started to make. I mean, I knew a few famous people, but it wasn't like how it was.
Yeah. So it was your return. Your return to Hollywood after all of this, after getting the acting work, and that's where you start to get in with these celebrities in the sense of the social circles, correct? I know that your Instagram is littered with that kind of stuff, and at the same time you're working as an actor, you're getting some of your music played. I've seen your Charles McMansion stuff, very reminiscent, by the way, of things like A Lonely Island. If you enjoy that kind of thing, I do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That actually, I'm gonna take an aside because we're here for some time. That was kind of like my original idea with it. Like, let's just do something ridiculous and fun, but the press was like, oh, they didn't get it.
Yeah,
So.
I didn't know. I don't watch a lot of TV, man. I'm on the internet a lot. I'm very selective about what I watch, and I showed the video to a few people, and they're like, "Oh, Vanderpump Rules," and I've heard of the show, and I'm like, "I don't know what that is. Can you?" And apparently, that guy's like a bartender on a reality show, and you guys are Charles McMansion.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. We had a mutual friend who was like, "Hey, I got this guy. You should meet him." And I wasn't doing anything at the time, and I was just like, "Yeah, let's." He's like, "You want to get together?" I was like, "Yeah, let's do it," and we had a lot of fun.
And it is a fun video, and you got a really good voice, and it's got a great beat. I encourage people to check that out. So now moving on. I think the big question is, because Seth and Claire are the people that you've made allegations against, and I just want to take it back. Where do you meet these two? So I understand you met Claire first and developed a relationship with her.
Well, I met both of them. The first time I met them was at a birthday party. I want to say it was 2014, but it was at a laser tag thing. That was the first time I met them.
So how do you develop that relationship? Because obviously it develops into something where you actually introduce him to a game night, Mafia, which is some kind of a role-playing game, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
I
go ahead.
I invited Claire and Seth over to the game night that Dane was starting a Mafia night. So I invited them. I was like, hey, come by. And they just kind of like came in and integrated.
And one of the things that made me believe what you were saying is, I remember early on you were doing a video and you were almost regretful that you kind of had to come out with what we're going to talk about next. You were talking about something and you could see the fondness in your face of, you said, man, that was a really great night. We had some good times. And I think that that's something we should highlight because these people often seem very normal. And, you would think that these are the people that are portrayed in the media as monsters all the time, but they integrate into society very well, where even when you have to out them, there is regret in your face, and you remember on something you did with these people fondly, right?
Yeah, I mean, I love these people. They came to my birthday party. I was over there all the time. It was very difficult, and like when I first became aware, that was just soul crushing because I was like, I can't even really get into all the emotions that came with it because it's just, oh, it was so much. It was so much because these are people you love, and then but that was a mask, and then I had to ask myself like, what was the real part? What was real? What was not? It's uh, excuse my language, but it's a mind fuck.
Okay, all right. And by the way, I know I told you this on the phone, but I'm a huge fan of Robot Chicken. It's been on for over 15 years now, I believe. I think it's in its 19th season. I've seen every single episode of that up and through halfway through this season. I catch it when I can, and then obviously I get it once it's out on the season and check it out. And I think it's a brilliant show. And one of the other things that I've seen people be critical about is, oh, he's just outing some actor. But Seth Green isn't just some actor. He's a power player in the entertainment industry. He has his own production company. And in a minute we're gonna go over the allegations, how this all comes out with the James Gunn controversy. But let's talk about that a bit. I mean, this guy's reach goes far beyond acting. Kind of explain the behind the scenes of what he does.
Well, he has Robot Chicken. He's on Family Guy. He has a production company. I believe they have other shows over there. I think maybe 3 shows at least.
So yeah,
he's big office. Lots of people working there.
Lots of influence. I saw him at that Bruce Willis roast out in the audience, and Kevin Pollak makes a pedophilia joke about the host. Who was it? It was man. Why can't I think of the guy's name? The Looper kid. He's not a kid.
Levitt?
Yes.
Gordon?
Yeah, and he basically said, yeah, Joseph Gordon-Levitt was able to make it as a child star in Hollywood because his parents didn't care who touched his pee-pee. You can go check that out, folks. That's something everybody in the audience thought was very funny at the Bruce Willis roast.
You're doing a great job tonight, Joey. You are, really. He's such a pro. It's no wonder you've been working steadily in Hollywood since you were 6 years old. Of course, it helps when your parents aren't choosy about who touches your pee-pee.
I didn't find it that funny.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's funny per se. I think it's like an admission, kind of wrapped up in a joke.
Yeah.
That is how the industry works, and that's the saddest part. Is that a lot of these parents will just let their kids, be used so they get the role, and then the parents take the money. It's
a Freudian admission, is what it is. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and that's something about the jokes when they're just jokes. I'm like, no, they're not. It's a release mechanism so you can get it out. And also with, in the case of Gunn, where there was just like tons and tons and tons of tweets, like, dude, you're thinking about this stuff all the time. It's kind of kind of a red flag.
Yes, and you know what? I'm glad that's what you brought up because that's the next place I wanted to go. This all blows up with tweets from James Gunn that are about, 2010, 2012, I think all the way up until 2014.
I think it was up. I think it was only up until 2012, but I
Oh,
think it's
okay. Well, he ended up scrubbing 10,000 of them. Now, that doesn't mean 10,000 of them were pedophilia jokes, but there certainly were plenty of them that were rape and child abuse jokes. And I certainly don't think they're funny. I think a lot of people think that they were more than reprehensible. People like An Open Secret pointed out that he was friends with Houston Huddleston, very, very close,
Yep.
much further than 2012. If you follow the Crazy Days and Nights blog, there is an obvious blind referring to James Gunn that says that he was under investigation for the same thing that Huddleston was, but he was not brought to charges. And just 2 months before this controversy. So all the way, this is a claim, but again, NT Lawyer, if you will, has been right many times about people such as Harvey Weinstein, Matt Lauer, Kevin Spacey, and others long before the mainstream. So this is an issue. Go ahead.
blog.
What's that?
There's a lot of stuff on that blog.
There's a lot. I mean, he's talked about Nexium. I've included that in some of my videos. And that's because a lot of that information is coming from months and months ago that doesn't come out in the mainstream until 6 months later, 12 months later, 18 months later. And it's definitely worth looking at. So I actually kind of took to Gunn's defense and said, hey, we're firing somebody without an investigation. That doesn't mean we don't need the investigation. We absolutely need that. So right now, that's what triggered you to go down to San Diego, start making these videos, outing people. And, I don't want to name the names. They're out there. People can watch those videos. I want to talk about the firsthand account in a moment. But you went down there, you said what you said, and I mean, from then on, this has been a firestorm for the last 3 weeks. So before we get into you going down there, you don't have any firsthand knowledge of Gunn. What do you know of Gunn through your Hollywood circles?
Here's the thing. I've met Gunn, a number of times. I've seen him out at, social gatherings. But I know his associates. Pretty well. And what happened was, so I was watching the back and forth with Gunn on Twitter, just being like, "Oh, they're just jokes and blah blah blah." And I was like, it started that Friday. I believe it was Cernovich that first started it. And I was just like watching. And that Saturday, the next day, there was a hostage situation. There was some crazy stuff right by my house. And it was crazy. And something activated inside of me. And it is the most intense feeling I ever had. And there was a voice to me that said, "This is your 9/11." And I knew at that instant I had to do what I did. I grabbed just keys. I didn't even grab a toothbrush. I was like, I'm going to San Diego and I'm going to do this because it's time this ends, because I've been watching what's been happening in the media for years now, like since really, especially after the election, but before the election, but since the election, it's just the media has been gaslighting the entire American public. And I think it comes down to this issue. Because someone like Gunn, who is like, on Twitter, like talking about blah, 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 Trump is this and that. Like, I think the root issue of it is that these people are pedophiles and involved in elite pedophile networks, some of which I've gotten very close to. So I said, I know I have to come out now. I have to do this because I'm tired of it. I want to just get rid of all the artifice and get down to what's actually going on.
All right, that's an excellent answer, and I think a truthful one. Again, everything about you is sincerity, and I think now it's really important to now that we've talked about Gunn, your firsthand knowledge. So I believe, yeah, go ahead.
Let me get off real quick about the sincerity. Like, my soul feels so free now. I feel so happy inside just to like get everything out and live truthfully. It feels amazing. And even though it's been very difficult and I've been attacked by, I don't even want to get into that, but a lot. Like, I feel on the inside, I feel at peace with it.
Excellent, man. And I believe that. I mean, again, I think that you're trying to move forward in the best way that you can and actually help people. And again, that's why I want to get into, your actual firsthand knowledge of this
Sure.
situation. So we have Seth Green, and I believe the bookshelf incident is before the sit down chat, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
So, for those not familiar, you're saying that you were hanging out at his home, and at some point, and I don't, and this is what I want you to clarify: was it just you and him? Was it you, him, and his wife? Were there more people there? I'm not asking you to name those people, but how does this go about? What do you guys? Obviously, you're hanging out socially. Like, what's
Wait,
the night like before? Yeah.
before we get into that, which event are you talking
Well,
about?
I'm talking about the bookshelf incident,
Oh,
not
the
the
book.
dinner. Yes, yes.
Yeah. So the bookshelf incident was, I believe, it was March of last year. There was a party over there. It was like game night, or well, it was a game day. Just hang out at their beach house, and there were a lot of people there just hanging out. It was fun. And then at the end of the night, like everyone had left except me, Seth, and his brother-in-law Bill.
Okay. So, you're naming right there that his brother-in-law was also present when this happened. And
I've said that before.
Okay.
His brother there.
okay, so tell us what happens. Just again, you're all hanging out there, and he pulls, this secret room out. You've described it as having it looking like a child's room and having bunk beds in it.
No, let's clarify. Okay.
Okay, yes, please.
The top floor of that place has a room that looks like a child's room. There's a bunch of stuffed animals. It's decorated like something you would decorate for a child. They have no children. There's another room downstairs that has a bunch of bunk beds. The secret room is a bedroom.
Okay. Okay, so
And
it's
what happened was as we were about to leave, like Seth, like we'd been drinking a little bit, and Seth turns to me, pulls back the bookshelf, and he's like, "This is where we keep the children."
oh, and again, I mean that's very, disturbing. But at that point, this is, I believe, pre-Podesta email release, right?
No,
This is after.
After. This is
Okay,
after.
so I think that, all right, that's something that we should definitely clarify for those that don't understand what these Podesta emails are. I really want to talk about them in the sense not of what the media has talked about them in, but in a place called reality.
Well, here's what we know. What the WikiLeaks dump makes clear is how the sausage is made in politics. And I think it's interesting just on that level. Also interesting is, remember, it's illegal to possess these stolen documents. It's different for the media. So everything you learn about this, you're learning from us.
And so I want to read this email to people to let them know there's really something wrong here. And if you can't tell me that you recognize there's something wrong, with an email that says, "I am popping up again to share our excitement about the reprise of our gang's visit to the farm in Lovettsville. And I thought I'd share a couple more notes. We plan to heat the pool, so a swim is a possibility. Bonnie will be Uber service to transport Ruby, Emerson, and Maeve Lazzuto, 11, 9, and almost 7. So you'll have some further entertainment, and they will be in that pool for sure." John Podesta is a man, I believe at this point in his 60s. Why would he need entertainment from 3 small children? And, what I want to show people right now is I want to show people an FBI document, which was really published by WikiLeaks and popularized by them, that goes over different symbols of pedophilia. And these symbols get associated. And by the way, before Pizzagate hit, there's actually a Daily Mail article all on these symbols. And I'm showing that right now to the audience. So again, this is something that predates quote unquote Pizzagate. So we find this pizzeria that's in these emails, and that's what it becomes. And by the way, there's a ton of circumstantial evidence out there that the person that runs this pizzeria, first of all, his avatar on Instagram was Antinous, which is an actual Greek figure that became the Greek god of pedophilia because he was an emperor's favorite boy toy, essentially. You can check that out. There's a long thing on Wikipedia there. Now, what, to me, I think gives massive credence to this, other than the past, and we can get into that in a moment, is the fact that its relation to the pizza place is not really circumstantial. We had somebody hack in. He goes by the name Big Fish, and I was suspect that anybody hacked in and found CP on these servers. But then he released the emails with the DC police, and he called them. And when he called the DC police, they didn't deny that he'd done this. They didn't deny that he'd given them access to these servers. They didn't deny that there were zip files there.
Okay, so there was a few different aspects to the website. It was connected to other servers. So there was a server in Berlin, Germany. There was servers all across the world, and basically it was just, I don't know if it was a site where they were actually sharing child porn that they had committed themselves, or if they were just sharing, or if it was just a place where you could easily get it. But then also there was a few other things on the back end of the website, like there was a shopping cart. So after all this had occurred, and after I'd called all these people, I was like, well, I don't know who else to contact. I'll try to contact people in the media. So I contacted all the local news stations in DC, and actually built a good relationship with some of the people over at Fox 5, but they just can't run the story.
And then, of course, the shooter comes in. And, folks, the one thing that he shot was the computer.
Edgar Welch showed up at Comet Ping Pong armed with an AR-15, a revolver, and a knife, determined to find underground rooms and vaults, firing his gun at a door behind which Alefantis says he wouldn't have found anything exciting.
And here is our bags and coat closet. The bullet went into our computer system.
Well, exactly. Well, that's the point. Like, even if he did shoot the hard drive, Isaac, in 9/11, we know they recovered hard drives very easily. And it was the FBI that did it, by the way. It was the FBI Forensics Office. That's how we know about the insider trading that happened just before, because they're from recovered hard drives of a building that was basically dustified. And you're telling me one shot goes through a computer, through a lock, through a door, and then through a computer, hits the hard drive, and we can't investigate it. It's absolute fiction. Now,
Yeah.
one of the things that is on the 4chan boards, is on Reddit before it's taken down, and then vote, is somebody's interpretation of what the codes are. Okay, and now I want to clarify this right now. This does not come from the FBI. This does not come from a document. But again, the emails are littered with code words like pizza, hot dogs, walnut sauce, and chicken. And according to these internet sleuths, chicken means boy. And that brings us to this next event. You're having dinner with Seth and Claire, and I believe it's just them, correct?
Yeah. I kind of want to back up a minute,
Sure.
though. So while this whole thing was kind of coalescing and the situation was presenting itself, I was studying all the Podesta emails and the Pizzagate information.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So, and I was, before the incident in Malibu, I was talking to Claire. I was like, because, I had no reason to suspect anything. I was like, have you heard about this Pizzagate stuff? It's so crazy. Like, there's this trafficking ring, and, it's crazy. I was bringing it up with her.
Mm-hmm.
So...
And I think that's important because, I wanted to get into, how awake Hollywood is and how prevalent this information gets passed down at times. But, I would assume just by your demeanor and what you've done, you were very vocal with your friends. And that's kind of how you think they approached you, because you had talked about these code words to them. And,
yeah.
That was maybe a way to ease in the conversation. So now that's where I want to go. I know, this has got to suck to go over again and again and again. But let's talk about it.
Yeah,
what happens at this dinner, my man?
So we had spent the day together, and just the three of us, me, Seth, and Claire, and we're having dinner, and Seth turns to me with the most somber tone, and he says, "We need to have a talk about chicken."
And then once that happens, Isaac, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay, sorry, you kind of froze up.
Uh,
So once that happens, and I want to clarify because this is kind of where you've been, thrown into the fire. He clarifies that he is sexually attracted to children, correct? And I mean that's where the
yeah.
conversation goes.
Again, like once the chicken thing, once he said that, because the stuff with the secret room and the children, I was already kind of like in denial mode, but also like a dread mode of like, oh god, oh god, oh god. And then, but once he said we need to have a talk about chicken, that's when everything just slammed into my chest, and I was like, oh my god, what what am I in the middle of? And I don't remember the exact words he used, but it was basically like, yes, we're into children. And I asked him, do you do like rituals and sacrifices too? And he said they didn't, but again, I have no way to know because they were obviously already being evasive about being pedophiles. So I had no way to know if that was true as well. But I was absolutely in shock, floored. That was pretty much the strongest emotion of that interaction. I just was like, what am I in the middle of right now? And like, what the heck is going on?
And for those that don't know, there are often people that do couple up that are into this sort of thing, and there are people that take to the abuse because what people don't understand is eventually, I mean, sex is a pleasurable experience, and they associate. That's why so many of them become molesters themselves. Apparently, is they associate this with positivity. I think one of the stronger examples of possibly people taking to it is the fact that Dennis Hassert, who was molesting people, it's come out back when he was a gym teacher, essentially a wrestling coach. And do you think that he stopped at any point when he gained more money and more power and more prestige and didn't get caught by the law? Well, his main aide, one of his brothers, is one of the accusers. I mean, literally, one of the brothers is one of the people on the stand in that extortion case, admitting that Hassert did molest him. That shows how strong this bond can be, in my opinion. So I also want to talk about Claire here and bring this symbol up right here. And this is the heart within a heart on the document. And you've also claimed that she wears this on a leather jacket, correct?
Yeah. It's a
And
black leather jacket with a heart within a heart on the back. And I'm like...
And that's mind-blowing.
It blows my mind how blatant these people are and just how much they've flaunted it. Even after Pizzagate came out and the public awareness is a lot higher to this stuff now, I was just like,
So she was wearing this after the story broke, basically.
Yeah.
Wow. And you've discussed how she has a a transgendered brother who's now a woman, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and into prostitution. I've heard the Bill Clinton story.
Since a prostitute since he was a minor. Well, he was a minor then.
So again, this is somebody that was sexually abused as a child, and now obviously has gone to great lengths through surgery, and I'm sure that everybody can have mental issues, but I think when you get to that far, like you've been abused that much, I mean, the gates are open. And, I'm not here to go after transgendered people or people that want to identify as this or that or do this and that to their body. But it shows not only is this person in the sex industry, but this is somebody that was molested as well. Let's not forget, Seth was a child actor. You can check him out in the original It, among many other things. And I believe he's well into his 40s now. And to be married and not have children, awesome. Very circumspect, and to be with somebody that you claim made this admission with him and is openly wearing symbols of girl lover around, according to the FBI, and that's some pretty tremendous stuff.
Yeah, I know, and that's why I'm just like, a lot of people are minimizing, they've been attacking me like, well, what proof do you have? What proof do you have? I'm like, guys, I'm bringing up a lot of stuff. And if you don't see the pattern, then your eyes are kind of closed. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's, yeah.
No,
Oh,
I think you've done kind of a good job of deflecting some of the criticisms that don't stand up. For instance, you've stuck to the same exact story time and time again, and now I kind of want to get into more of the problem here. For instance, this Pizzagate thing is largely involved Democrats and the left, but as we just talked about Hassert, he's as right wing as he gets. He was 3 heartbeats away from the president being the Speaker of the House, the longest serving Speaker of the House of all time. And, I want to show people this book. It's by Nick Bryant, and it is The Franklin Scandal. And in this book, for the audience to check out, the. The appendix alone, the documentation that he shows, okay, folks, that's over 100 pages long. And it could have been much longer. And by the way, I think there's some problems with the Franklin scandal, but this was as right-wing as it gets. And I'm going to get into that right now because this is not a right or left issue, Isaac. This is a very real issue that I think that most human beings on both sides of the political spectrum understand is wrong. But this was embedded in the Republican Party then. And when I hear, for instance, you being on the largest alternative media program in the world. And by the way, it kind of sucks. I interviewed Nick Bryant 9 years ago. That was wiped out yesterday. I worked for Jones all those years ago. I was the first person to have my own show on InfoWars outside of Alex, and we did some really good work there. And I looked for it today to see if anybody had re-uploaded. It's gone. And that Nick Bryant interview was a powerful one. It's very upsetting, and silencing these kind of voices is dangerous. I may not agree with Alex all the time, but I want him to have that venue. But this isn't about cold-blooded leftists. This is about sick people that come from all sides of the political spectrum, correct?
Yeah, I've been very clear about this. This should be a nonpartisan issue. And the reason I first became aware of these elite rings was the Conspiracy of Silence documentary. And from that, I did studies on like Presidio, stuff like that. I actually had a girlfriend back in 2004 is when we first started dating. Her mother was a victim of satanic ritual abuse in Manhattan Beach in like the 50s and 60s. So I knew about this stuff, but it's like that was a long time ago, so it wasn't like at the forefront of my mind. Mm-hmm. But it keeps surfacing and surfacing. And this should be a nonpartisan issue. The Dennis Hastert thing, he's a Republican. The Franklin Callboy thing, Republican. It's one of the things I'm trying to bring people's focus to is that the pedophilia is used for blackmail, and that's how people get their power. They make themselves they make themselves blackmailable. They have the they get filmed doing stuff, and then they're doing someone else's bidding, and the whole system sucks. It's awful. It's created so many problems in all areas of life. Like every major industry, I'm sure, has people that are being controlled by blackmail, and it's primarily done through the pedophilia networks.
And I don't think that people get, again, how prevalent it really is, because when we see these people, first of all, in the media, unless it's the Catholic Church, it's always downplayed. For instance, this couple.
Two people have been arrested in Maryland after police say they produced porn involving a toddler. Investigators say they found Peter Giovi and Jennifer Giovi in possession of several files of child pornography, and they say the two took part in producing child porn involving a 2-year-old. They have been charged with child sexual abuse and other related charges.
And selling that to somebody, they're not talking about who the customers are. They're talking about these people. And the other thing is that is just astounding to me, and you can tell that it's set up for the establishment that is doing this, is the fact that you're going to get less time and possibly no jail time for molesting a child, probably many children, because that's what these sickos do, maybe getting brought to justice minimally for one, than raping a grown person. You could do life in prison for raping somebody 18 or above, but that never seems to be the case when it is a child. And oftentimes, they circumvent these things. it's mind-boggling that we've allowed this to happen for so long. So I guess my next question to you is, you know, how much of this is how awake is Hollywood? Because you talk about 9/11, and obviously that's a huge issue of mine, always has been. And you know, I obviously got in touch with a lot of Hollywood people through that. You know, I remember Joe Rogan being one of the first people that bought our DVDs and started kind of handing them out to people. Doesn't mean he agreed with the whole thing, but I remember we ran into a couple of the guys from Scrubs while we were out in Los Feliz and West Hollywood trying to get it into theaters. People were very aware. And I think that was a spark of distrust globally. And even if you didn't believe it, you knew about it. And I think that's what's kind of caused people to wake up for things like Pedogate or Pizzagate to take off in a short period of time, because we don't trust the media. We don't trust the government. So how awake is Hollywood? And not who are the good people, but how many good people are there out there?
Let's see. Two questions. How awake is Hollywood? Not very. Well, you know, the people that are involved in like the blackmail, they know what's going on, but you know, they're part of the problem. There's a lot of people that maybe they know about, you know, like the 9/11, whatever, the government corruption, but they're not going to come out and say anything, because if they do, you know, it's like it's going to have ramifications for their career. So the awake, it's a whole control system mechanism. The awake people are pressured to not say anything because they want to work, they want to eat. The ones who are aware but part of the problem, of course, they're not going to say anything. And then you have the people that, you know, are just oblivious to everything. They're just taking the mainstream media narrative and just accepting it as the truth.
And I think you're pretty correct there.
But I will say I've had a lot of like rude people who are like, "We love what you're doing. Thank you so much. We're sick of these monsters. We're sick of this crap." They've reached out privately. So I know I have some support, but again, it's like, it's such a tricky thing, because you have these people working for criminals, basically, and you know, they want to feed their families, but they also, it's a mess.
Well, you know, I think a shining example of this is the Harvey Weinstein situation. For instance, you know, Harvey Weinstein was using Black Cube, which were ex-Israeli Mossad, to harass, intimidate, or quote-unquote investigate people.
It says that Israeli operatives collected information on former Obama officials who were supporters of the Iran nuclear deal. Why would they do that? The report also says the operatives came from the same firm used by Harvey Weinstein. Ronan Farrow broke this story. He joins us now. That's an interesting coincidence.
It is.
So the firm is called Black Cube.
Right.
And give us the headline of what you've learned about how this connects to the Iran deal.
Black Cube is this international elite private intelligence agency staffed by former members of the Mossad and other Israeli intelligence units.
And, you know, the other side of that coin is, you know, some of these people making the rape allegations, I don't know if they're just poisoning the well on purpose. In other words, they've been paid to make these accusations, so later on other women will be discredited. But are emailing him years later, you know, trying to get parts saying, "I miss you," fawning over him after these rapes supposedly occurred. And I think that's a minutia. You know, from what I understand, you know, Kate Beckinsale is the only woman who was underage that Harvey tried to have sex with when she was 17. By no means am I defending Weinstein, but I'm just trying to bring up how the system works. Like, these guys are going to great lengths. He's using ex-Israeli Mossad. He's in touch with the ex-Prime Minister of Israel, who's recommending these people to him. So it just shows you how embedded. For instance, you know, Weinstein was the personal projectionist for Bill Clinton and traveled with him on vacations to show him films.
I've had the privilege of knowing the president for 20 years. And I just wanted to tell you that how I really got to know the president really well. Some of you don't know, because there wasn't a Senate confirmation hearing. This was done rather privately. I was the chief projectionist at the White House from 1992 to 2000. And I'm going to tell you, the president and I saw so many movies together. I'm not kidding, by the way. We saw so many movies together. Some of mine, like Good Will Hunting, and I remember seeing The Harmonists, and so many great films with the president. We even built went on vacation, we even built a little portable screening room for the president.
That's how embedded these people are. And I think the latest shining example of that is this Nexium situation, where you have the Bronfmans, and people look at the Bronfmans and they say Seagram's heirs, alcohol fortune. And I'm like, well, actually, Edgar Bronfman, who was this billionaire, and yes, he made his money there, he actually heavily invested in MGM back in, I believe, the 60s. So he was big into entertainment then, and then he was heavily invested in government. Again, entertainment and government intertwined. He was the head of the World Jewish Congress. Now, later on, his son, Edgar Bronfman, invests in Universal and Warner Music, huge groups. So I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of these people that are involved in this, people like Allison Mack and, a lot of lower level actresses and models are there because they think they're going to get parts out of this or power in Hollywood. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, they do get parts off of it, and the Weinstein situation is actually it elucidates so much because here are these women that are basically selling themselves for parts. They're getting famous. A lot of people don't know this, but the whole remember the fappening, as they called it, with the Jennifer Lawrence. Mm-hmm. Those were from Harvey's phone.
Oh, all of them?
I know. Well, I don't know about all of them, but all the JLaw stuff. Those are, people are saying, yeah, that was Harvey's phone.
Wow, that's crazy.
So you have this system where women are willing to defend this guy who, by all accounts was a monster, right? They're willing to defend him publicly. They're reaching out to him because they think it will benefit them personally. So it's just, and as far as like his ties to the Clintons and, various people in Israel, that's well documented. These are, the pictures are there. So it's people covering for other people. It's a mess. It's a mess.
So, Isaac, I think we've done a pretty great interview here, but I want to wrap it up with what you're doing now, how people should reach out to you, who should reach out to you, because I know there's a lot of nonsense out there. And again, I appreciate your time today, and I hope you don't get involved in all this drama, he said, she said nonsense, because quite frankly, there are things I disagree with you on. I'm not a Q guy, but, I'm not going to hold that against you. Again, that's your research, that's your opinion, and I don't think that's something that should be divisive. Here we have a first-hand whistleblower, somebody who's giving us some information on the inside, and I think that we should focus on that. But at the same time, you're doing a lot more. You're doing live casts almost every day. You are, bringing SRA, satanic ritual abuse, which, folks, believe it or not, it wasn't satanic panic in the 1980s. Go look at some of the raw videos that were made. That you can still find on YouTube before they take them down. I mean, I've watched these things. It's very hard for me to believe that all of these children were lying. But we live in a day and age where a couple that was literally convicted for life of molesting children and satanic ritual abuse got out of jail and were championed by the media and the Satanic Church. And I'm a pretty agnostic guy. I'm not going to sit here and preach about Jesus Christmas, but talk about dark. That's some dark stuff. So, Isaac, how can people help? How can they get a hold of you? And what's your next move, my man?
Well, before I get to that, I would love to touch on the SRA stuff because
sure.
The Satanic Panic in the 80s, that was a manufactured media campaign to kind of cast doubt onto all these damning revelations that were coming out about the McMartin case, about other cases. The dam was breaking, but at that point we didn't have the internet. So, it was very easy to manage it. So they injected the Satanic Panic and made it, if you cared about that stuff, you're just overreacting. It's an example of the manipulation and gaslighting that the media does on a daily basis. So something to think about. As far as what I'm doing now, I knew I had to speak out. I'm speaking out. I'm trying to bring people together. And actually, we got a very, very explosive whistleblower that came forward. He was wrapped up and being targeted with harassment and stalking for knowing about a cult up in Oregon, and his name is Mikey. This weekend, all of my people that have been following me on Twitter, we banded together. We found him a safe house. We got a little money in his pocket, and because he's basically been starving, they've been starving him out. You should check out his story. It involves Voodoo Donuts, who, by the way, just recently put all of their social media private. They're just kind of trying to scrub stuff. Something is.
And who is that, by the way? I see. When you said that to me yesterday, first of all, I was so busy yesterday, but I thought that we were talking about possibly some kind of a poisoning. I didn't. Are they a band?
Who a band?
Voodoo Donuts. I'm sorry.
Voodoo Donuts. No, Voodoo Donuts is a donut chain that is nationwide.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Unaware. I guess I'm going to have to look into that story. And you know what, Isaac? There was one other thing I really did want to clarify. I forgot. I just looked at my notes. Is, we didn't really talk about the media attack. And I want to talk about that really quickly because everybody from TMZ to the Daily Mail to now Media Matters and others, let's not even talk about the alternative media stuff, but the mainstream has really come after you, and you've been very open and vocal that you're willing to talk to them and saying that the things that you have said, please sue me, tell me, let's have discovery. That's been your line the entire time. Now, one of the things they kind of smeared you with was you've talked about knowing Paris Jackson, the daughter of Michael Jackson. And one of the things that you said that I thought was very interesting was you wanted to talk to her about the things we've talked about today, but she was surrounded by pedophiles. Number one, I'd kind of like you to clarify that. Like, who are we talking? Producers? When you say surrounded, I'm not asking you to name names, but I am kind of asking you what you're talking about because this sounds like one of those firsthand accounts. And how the media said that you were threatening to kill people and choke Paris Hilton, and just I never saw anything like that. Yeah, so go ahead.
Well, there's a few issues there. First off, I texted Paris because this thing was coming out. I was like, Paris, they're gonna try to draw you into this. They're deflecting. I don't do it. And she didn't trust me. But the reason I met Paris was through Seth and Claire, and Macaulay is really close with her. So, I really wanted to tell her this stuff, like that day at the party, the next day of the party over at her house. But I was just like, it's not a good idea. It's not a good idea. I didn't know if she'd be able to process it. B, like, she's surrounded by these people. It's just going to cause more attention that I don't need. She doesn't need right now.
All right, so let me stop you there. Surrounded by these people. Who are we talking? Are you saying because she's friends with people like Seth and Claire, or are you talking about in the bit? So you're telling me socially, outside of Seth and Claire, there are other people that you believe are into children that are her friends, and she just could not grasp that because she'd have to sever so many relationships or rethink them.
Yeah, basically.
Okay. All right. Well, that's what I really wanted to know on that one. And then let's get into the media really quickly. What is this talk of you threatening to choke her and all this insanity?
What happened? There was a roughhouse incident at her house. I didn't really want to get into it.
Okay.
But I will say that after the incident happened, I stayed many hours later. Stayed the rest of the night, actually. Spent the night there, and in the morning we both gave each other a gift. She gave me a hat, and I gave her a hat. So, if it was such a a violent incident, you would think that they would probably kick me out of the house right away if it was that big of a deal, and not give me a gift. So, I knew going into this, I'm like, they're going to throw everything they can at me. They're going to dig up stuff. They're going to make up stuff. I was prepared for it because I really believe that we should live in a world where violent pedophiles don't rape, abuse, and or sometimes torture and murder children. I believe that's a noble cause. I believe it's a cause that should unite people of all persuasions, all races. It seems like a no-brainer to me. I just wanted to bring awareness to it because of the just all the noise. I really feel that this is the issue, that everything is everything is emanating around it, but no one is getting to the root of it. And that's why I did what I did.
And, I guess to go into it then, I don't want to name his name, but probably one of the top two people that you've named, famous director. You tell people to check out the Heather O'Rourke incident. And most people that are young have no idea what you're talking about, but I do. I just turned 39 this week. I'm a bit of an older guy. So he was a director of the Poltergeist movies. And Heather O'Rourke was the little girl in the Poltergeist movies.
Her sister was doing Pennies from Heaven at MGM, and Heather was there with me. And we went to lunch, and Steven Spielberg approached her and said, "Would you like to do a movie?" And she said, "I don't know." And he said, "Well, how old are you?" She said, "I'm 5. And he said, "Well, you need to be 6." She said, "Fine." She just wanted to eat her sandwich. She said, "Well, okay, I'll interview you." She said, "Fine." We went into the interview, and Steven had these stuffed animals. And it was a pink pig and a purple fish or something. Said she had to be frightened. Well, she laughed and laughed and giggled. And he told her the next day, he said, "Well, you're too young." She said, "Fine." We didn't know who Steven was, and then he said there was something about her, so he asked her to come back again, and we brought a script from Sesame Street about the Cookie Monster. And well, I didn't think I'd have to go in there with her, but I had to go in there with her and do the script with her. And then Steven said, "Well, that was good, Heather." He said, "Can you cry?" And she said, "Yeah." He said, "Can you scream?" She kept screaming and screaming. She finally said, "I really can't do anymore." And he said, "Fine." He said, "You can go now." And the next day he told her in the commissary she had the job.
And, it was spun that she got some rare disease and died very, very quickly. But the autopsy revealed it was internal bowel, her bowels were destroyed.
L.A. lawyer Sanford Gage is representing Kathleen in a lawsuit against Kaiser Permanente Hospital. The charge is medical misdiagnosis.
The x-rays themselves show that the bowel was so obstructed that even if the obstruction in some way were misread as due to Crohn's disease, it still was the kind of a condition that in all probability should have been removed surgically and not treated medically. So I believe either way it's a case that we should win.
There are pictures of, not only this guy with Heather O'Rourke, but Heather O'Rourke and Drew Barrymore at the same time. And if anybody knows about Drew Barrymore, her father, John Barrymore, it's out in the open. People like Russell Brand have named him as a pedophile. She was hanging out with these people well before her teenage years, doing drugs and God knows what else. And, she's had a very, troubling time keeping relationships together. I think I think Tom Green was her third husband. I don't know what happened there, but you're naming Spielberg. I guess I'll just say it. That is one of the most huge things out there. How many people know this? If you're talking about it, obviously it's in the air in Hollywood. I do encourage people to check out the Heather O'Rourke information because it is stunning and very upsetting and highly disturbing. But I guess let's get the synopsis on that. How many people are aware? Where are you kind of taking this from? Because this is an allegation. This is kind of speculation on your part, correct?
Well, let me put it to you. Let's use another example, okay? Mm-hmm. Kevin Spacey, all right? Sure. Kevin Spacey, everyone in Hollywood, knows Kevin Spacey is a predator, okay? And this has been known for many, many, many years, okay? And no one did anything about it. Same like Spielberg. I believe Crispin Glover wrote an essay years ago where he was basically outing Spielberg. And, that's why I feel fine just coming out and saying it to the world because I know they don't want to have a lawsuit that involves discovery and getting people in there, getting the financials in there, So I just want to cut through the crap, because you talk about someone like Spielberg who has had massive cultural influence.
Huge.
This is a titan of Hollywood, and people are. I feel like they should. I feel like they should know that these people that are very powerful, that are influencing your mind. I feel like people should know what these people are about, like Spielberg.
No, I you know what? And I'm glad you're talking about it. I'm glad you used Kevin Spacey as an example because Bryan Singer was actually outed to me in, I believe it was 2006. I was at the C-SPAN event that actually Charlie Sheen helped put on, and now there are allegations against Sheen and, Corey Haim and all sorts of terrible things, but he put on this 9/11 event. C-SPAN was covering it, and there were some Hollywood people there. And one of the guys kind of took me aside, and we were talking. He's like, "Well, why are you doing this stuff, man?" And I go, "Well, outside of the fact that 3,000 people plus were murdered, in New York, which is very close to home. I had been in the World Trade Center dozens of times as a kid, and you were kind of in awe. I remember walking past them, and you kind of looked up, and it would be vertigo. I mean, they were incredible sights. I'd be out in Flatbush, Brooklyn, at my great aunt's house, and you'd see them tower over everything. It was a shocking moment. I said, at the end of the day, I've done the research, and at the very tippity top, you have a lot of these people that are into the occult and into, raping and killing kids, and I'm against that. And I go, I know it's prevalent in Hollywood. I go, can you tell me, can you name somebody for me? And he named Singer right as the film with Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor, the Superman that failed, was coming out. It was just about to come out that summer. And I'm just like, oh, man, that hurt me a little bit. I like The Usual Suspects, But what he described to me was he was at a party where Singer had a 14-year-old boy on a dog leash. A topless 14-year-old boy on a dog leash, and he was just parading him around this party. And I was just kind of taken aback, and he didn't tell me where this party was. I would assume it was probably at Singer's house, given the timing of it. I don't know that, and watching An Open Secret and seeing what these people have alleged. But he said it was very brazen. And, this is a guy to this day, he doesn't do a lot in Hollywood, but he has produced several movies, and, they're mostly more independent projects. I don't want to out the guy here because I promised I would always keep it a secret. But he told me this literally a decade before it started to break into the media. And so, I got to tell people, I don't doubt it when a guy like Isaac Kappy, who's been around, and he talks about it in the sense that it's something that is so well known, as the Kevin Spacey thing was, that maybe, hopefully, it doesn't take another 10 years if this is true to come out, my man. And then I imagine that's why you're doing this.
I am, because, it's these people have hijacked our culture, and that's kind of dear to me as well. They've hijacked our culture. They've hijacked our political institutions. It's an infestation, and I don't think that as Americans, as people just anywhere in the world, I don't think that we should have to succumb to these thick people having power over us. It's unconscionable to me. Like, the thought of hurting children is like, and especially if it's industrial scale, it needs to end. It needs to end. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm taking the slings. It's fine. More are coming forward, like Mikey. I think within, I can't even imagine what will happen in the public psyche within a year with this stuff. But I feel like an avalanche has started.
Well, I really do hope you're right, and I hope that also you're careful. And I'm not just talking about your physical safety, obviously. I'm just saying, I know that you're being bombarded with information. And, there are, I just say this to people because, I've lived through it. I've been doing this now for a very long time, well over a decade. I've been contacted many people. There are crazy people out there. That is a thing. There are disinformation agents out there on purpose. And I always tell people to look at all information, use discernment. You're going to just get bombarded with stuff you already have. I know this. So in closing, I'd like to give you the last word. Thank you for your time, Isaac. And, just kind of tell people how they can help out, even, without your help, how they can get involved in their society.
Well, if you want to stay abreast of whatever's going on with me, I've been on Twitter. That's been my primary mode of communication. That's at Isaac Kappy, ISAACKAPPY. So if you want to stay abreast, that and my Periscopes. Because I've been talking to people, and a lot of these people that I've been communicating with, they hadn't really understood, what's going on in Hollywood. So it's great because we're getting awareness out there. We can't solve this problem until we realize there's a problem, and it's been going on a long time. There have been groups like Open Secret that have been getting information out, like Crazy Days and Nights has been leaking a lot of stuff, which is great. But we just need to get it more and more into the public psyche so we can have an honest discussion about it. Like, I feel it deserves it. It's dangerous because people that are abused as children, I mean, they don't usually end up being well-adjusted adults, you know? And for the health of a society, I feel like we should just kind of get rid of this practice.
Well, I agree with you 100%, and I think that, again, more conversation is always better, and it's never bad to have a conversation and talk about this stuff, because it is a reality, and it's something that we really do have to take control of and show that you're not above the law. It doesn't matter whether you're Jimmy Savile, who got away with this forever and, you know, was a great friend to Prince Charles. He's, you know, nothing's happened to Prince Charles. You can't tell me that MI5, MI6 didn't know what this guy was doing. We're talking about unspeakable things to children, to corpses, to people in nursing homes. I mean, just the most despicable stuff. You have Heath, Sir Edward Heath, who was a prime minister, who's now been outed as one of these people. Folks, this is very real, and I want to thank Isaac Kappy for his time, for what I think is really the definitive interview with this guy. Get at him. I think you're going to be seeing a lot more of him, and once again, folks, be the change you want to see in the world.